Hi. So I know it's been almost a year. I know that's a bit of a pattern for me, and that's one of the things I wanted to talk about is that is a pattern I am trying to address in my sewing. In that when I start going through things, I tend to try to disappear from the public eye. You know, much like our foremothers were forced to do by being shoved into attics with yellow wallpaper and whatnot. Only mine's self-imposed. No one's making me do this. This is just a habit from a similarly toxic environment in which if you are not doing well and you are not representing the family in a very wonderful way, we'll put, then it is best that you are kept out of sight altogether. I am looking to unlearn that, and hence why. And as you can tell from my environment, and me in general, a lot has changed in the last 10 months. I have moved apartments, and I now have a proper workroom, which is nice. I will do a tour on that later. I have also gained a bit more confidence in myself as my life circumstances have changed, and I've been able to afford to exist without, choosing between bills, food, and having a roof over my head. That's been pleasant. And I've started letting people go, like more than I was, and really narrowing down my circle. There's been a lot of changes that have been going on over the last few years, and I'm looking to expand on that. But let's talk about what this is going to mean for this channel and what's going on with this. I do not know how regularly I'll be posting or what my posting schedule looks like right now. I'm still trying to work that out and ease my way back into content creation outside of little blurbs on TikTok. Follow me on TikTok. But I'm trying to be myself out in the open more regularly and a lot more consistently. But it's going to be a slow process as I figure out how to do that without the people in my life who made that impossible for me in the first place. It's going to be a process to undo everything I've learned by being surrounded by the people I was raised by. It'll be easier without them around. But undoing decades of damage is still a process. So I'm going to figure out what works best for me in balance between this, the blog, and my day job, and my night job. It's going to be a process that we're going to learn together. But for now, this is pretty much what we're looking at for the time being. Just me and my workroom making nice things. A couple functional things that have changed that feels visibly obvious to me right now is that as my confidence within myself has changed and I managed to develop some time to actually focus in on myself and do what I needed to do to feel better and to be more myself, essentially, is that the era of the clothing I have made has changed. It's one very interesting thing about me. That is one very interesting thing about myself that I've discovered, is that as I've started to feel more confident in myself, I've become more comfortable wearing things that are properly fitted to myself. This channel was never really a super structured, super specific way of doing things, and I understand that's how you have to do it if you want to succeed on YouTube. I'm still feeling out how big I want content creation to be in my plans as it was. I love doing content creation, and I love creating, and I love wearing what I make. But I don't know if this is the final thing I want to be doing or not. Right now, I'm just happy being me, and we'll figure out the rest, yeah? So what does this mean from a project planning standpoint? What does it mean for the sewing aspect of the channel? Not a lot. Like, not a lot is going to change in the aspect that there is going to be sewing and that that's going to be a core part of the channel going forward. It's more going to be how it's utilized, so to speak. So yeah, sewing is going to be the big thing, but I also want to explore historically how women have been treated, especially as far as mental health goes, and what resources have been available to them. And how places like fantasy and fiction, a specific historical fantasy and fiction, have treated women. And what things like their costume design and their visual media could say about them. I really want to dig into what all that means, go a little English major on it for fun. But I don't want to be constrained to just one thing. I don't want to be tied to having to be one aspect of myself when there's plenty other aspects to explore. Because I feel like as creatives, that's where we get stuck in this concept of we have to fit a specific niche. Niches are useful for, the algorithm, the almighty algorithm, but they're not helpful with creative expression, which is a function and a detriment of the entire system. And I don't know, I just want to explore. That is the entire theme for the rest of this year as far as content creation goes, is exploration. Now, am I always going to stick to those topics? Honestly, I'm going to level with you, probably not. In specific, now that I have a dedicated space to actually sew and create with, I want to be able to make bigger and more elaborate projects than I could when I was doing it from my kitchen table or a corner of a closet. Let's take advantage of what we have with this and see where we're going to go next. Because as things evolve and change, so is everything I'm going to be doing. The whole point, and this is something that people who make creativity part of their lifestyle ultimately deal with a lot, is as your life changes, your style of creation changes with it. As you can see, this aspect has never changed. And even though I have a door now, I don't really keep them out of this room. Yes, well, they're happy and they were cramped in the basement we were originally in too. So it's just gonna be me and my cats and, well, you, hanging out in my workroom, making things. What the first project is going to be, TBD, we're still thinking about that one. I do have one project I'm going to be working on fairly shortly, but that is a Christmas gift for somebody, and I kind of want to keep that one a surprise. So after I'm done with my current project, I will probably be looking into setting up a poll on my Instagram to figure out what the next project is going to be. I'm still toying with others, but I want to do similar things with Lore Olympus, both in the early days of the comic before the look was fully established, and in the present day of the comics, and exploring characters like Demeter, Persephone, Artemis. I really do want to dig into Persephone because it's only very recently that we've seen what happens when Persephone gets to dress herself, which that lack of agency alone as a subject matter says a lot about the narrative's understanding of Persephone and her agency. I also want to go with what the framing seems to want to say about Persephone versus what it actually says. And keep in mind, for anyone who's about to get very defensive about Lore Olympus, this is coming from someone who genuinely loves the story and wants to see it succeed, but is also very, very frustrated with the direction they've taken it. That's what we want to play with, is what media says about women and what history says about women versus what women say about themselves. When it comes to these topics, especially when we're talking about analyzing female characters, that dichotomy kind of has to be acknowledged and honored as a point of fact, because that's the entire, it's not the entire point about analyzing female characters, but it is a huge one. Persephone is an excellent example. Literal goddess of spring and the queen of the realm of the dead. But when you look at Lore Olympus, it very obviously and very aggressively favors one over the other. When it comes to Persephone, everything she does is either framed as an accident, or it's described as this total girl boss moment. Look how gaslight, gatekeep, whatever she is, without really giving it meaning. It's never her fault or her actions that or why she does the things she does. Everything that happens to Persephone happens to her or is an accident. Or anyone she does harm definitely 1,000% deserved it, no matter what. Don't look at the details too hard or you'll make your head spin. And I want to give these female characters the space to analyze them as a whole broad perspective, which, yes, will require multiple videos apiece to talk about each character and how they are perceived in the meta, in, our world, how they're perceived by the public and their close community, and how they perceive themselves. With some room to talk about what's in between, I want to encourage that bit of nuance and descriptive thought so that we can try to broaden our horizons on how these characters work or should be read. Because there's a lot being left on the table in these discussions a lot of the times. I feel that just by using their clothes as the example, I feel like we could really dig into. Now, obviously, as you've heard from my descriptions, the videos we're going to be doing are going to go into a lot more of in their clothes. The clothes are really just going to be used as symbols, as ways to explain what I'm referring to when I talk about these things. A very simple thing to point at and say, hey, this is what I'm talking about with this. And it's honestly just acknowledging the hard work of craftsfolk who don't get nearly enough attention or pay, and just really highlighting how much effort and thought goes into the design process for all of this, while making it clear why some of these decisions might have been made on an individual character by character basis. And yeah, as referenced by the fact that I'm bringing up a webtoon as a huge example, TV is not going to be the only place we're going to look. Movies, webcomics, that sort of thing, we're going to really expand on what it says, what our interpretation of fashion says about us, and how what we decide to do with female characters says about us as a culture. And follow a similar vein with Lore Olympus with a variety of characters, namely at this point in time, Hera, Demeter, Persephone, and I'm debating Artemis, to be honest, and I will get into why it's a debate for Artemis after. But for right now, that is the plan for this channel, is to interrogate women's lives through their fashion and through the lens of fiction and fantasy.